want to thank everyone again for joining us for a nice discussion so far. We've had a great time learning about what everyone's up to and talking about the future of the Spatial Music Workshop. This is a session that's supposed to be kind of what we were doing last time, a discussion. So if what we'll do is Kyle, Eric, and I will propose some questions, and we'll do it the same way. If you'd like to speak up, go ahead and unmute. And if things get kind of crowded, we'll use the yes feature in the participant section to let us know that you have a question or a comment. Also, if you want to post it in chat, that's fine too. I see a few more folks are coming in, so we'll just give it a moment. And just a reminder that this is streaming on YouTube. And if you need the link for your friends, family, or colleagues, let us know. We'll drop it into the chat. And this time, again, I would encourage you, if you've spoken and haven't introduced kind of where you're from or your affiliation, if you'd like to do that when you ask a question or make a comment, please do so. We have quite a diverse group, an internationally diverse group, I might say, as Eric has pointed out. So pretty cool to know if you're phoning in outside from the US. Great, so I'd like to kick things off. Kyle and Eric and I have been talking about the Spatial Music Workshop since we can't do it in person right now, and ideating on what we could do in the future. One question we wanted to pose to everyone here is, what is your take on a thematic spatial music workshop? So in the future, if we did a more installation-based workshop, or even a mobile technology spatial music workshop, what does that sound interesting? Or what do you guys think? It sounds like the first thematic thing we want to do is water for sure. So maybe
Can I throw something in here?
Yes, please.
Hi, Neil Farwell. I'm in the UK, and I was at the Spatial Music Workshop in 2016. Just in response to that question, I think one of the things that was really exciting about the workshop that year, and it sounds like from others, was encountering people who are doing very different things, different ideas for what might happen with spatial music in general and in the cube and the associated spaces in particular. So that's kind of an initial vote for not doing a thematic thing, which isn't to say that there couldn't be great advantages in doing it that way as well. It's just an initial idea.
I guess the follow-up to that would be, if you wanted to have a theme, and also it's not necessarily either or, because we could have a call for a thematic concept that might be so weird that we only get one or two ideas. But so you might wind up with a spatial music workshop with a few people who are on that theme, and then other people are just someplace completely different. What if there were themes that would be worthy of exploring? Does anybody have an idea where they thought it would be really cool to do X? Get some people to deal with X in the spatial music workshop.
Hey guys, my name's Charlie Duff. Just chime into that comment there. Actually, hearing some of you talk earlier about the footsteps coming from the ceiling, in my mind I thought, oh, filter out the HF and make the footsteps wooded, and you got yourself kind of a horror scene, somebody walking upstairs. So potentially like a Halloween themed scenario. I can even think of a bunch of animals that would be interesting to record and mess with the sounds, like bats, for example.
Hi, Monica Bowles. I'm in Denver. I was at the Spatial Music Workshop in 2016 and have since done a few other things at the Cube. Yeah, I mean, thematically, I have the things that I'm interested in, which are more like, sonification. I know that there's quite a few kind of artists in this group that do a lot of work with sonification, and I think you know, and also just kind of what some of the people that, you know, work in the Cube are doing. I think having some deeper workshops on that would be pretty cool. And I mean, I think you guys were doing the live sound or like the live performance thing this round, correct? And yeah, I mean, is that kind of like thematic and enough? Are those, yeah, so.
Well, I'll just say one of the things that occurred to us as we were sifting through the proposals for this year is that there were a number of events that might have been more suited for an installation. Like they didn't necessarily have a beginning and ending point. And that was one of the things that kind of was the impetus for this question. It's like, you know, it's aside from thematics, it's also a logistical thing. If we were to set up installations around, like, how does that work with also having a performance in the Cube and so forth? But that's just one idea. I mean, we're very interested in any other ideas that you might have in regards to that.
Hey everybody, Theta Spatial here. In terms of the installations, I think it would be a good idea, simply because it's a reflection of the times that we're in right now, you know, in terms of what kind of work people can access, and also challenging audiences' notions of, you know, how to gather and experience art together. And so having installations, I think, is a nice way to be able to bring people into the space. And between installation and performances, I think just due to the times that we're in, it can really push the envelope for both creators and folks that come to visit.
So I think even a bigger point there is accessibility. So it's something we always challenge with, is trying to get the most people into the Cube as possible every year. So we made a little poll to try and get your take on what we're doing. If that didn't pop up, I like the phrase gesticulate wildly. I forgot who already said that, but was that Ted? And I'll leave this up for a while so we can keep discussing. A nice segue to another, and maybe I should say something for those watching on the YouTube stream right now. We have many, I think most of the participants of the spatial music workshop here from the past 6 years. We've been talking for the past few hours about best practices. What are you working on now? How are you working in multi-channel audio in different facilities? Some strategies and artistic concepts that work. Just to give you some context if you're watching at home. One question that Eric has posed, and Eric, if you'd like to, maybe you should pose the question about more of a technical workshop.
Yeah, let me jump in. And before I do, I'd first like to profusely thank Tanner and Kyle for picking up the wonderful burden of running the spatial music workshop this year. It's been an incredible pleasure and really an honor to invite all of you to come and work with us. And I mean, even just looking at all of your names on the screen, I know in some cases I'm seeing your video too, in some cases I'm just seeing your names, but in any case, it's just reminding me of the incredible time that we all shared in the different years of the workshop. And I mean, just for fun, I'll let you know what I've gone off to work on now, which is something called the I4 project, which is a kind of an artist residency, only it's an artist residency for everybody. So I just put those those links down for you, anyone who wants to see what that's all about. And also, things are a little bit fluid in terms of, we have the workshop, we have CubeFest, now we have I4, and people sort of move back and forth. So for example, I think if Bora is here right now, she is currently a member of the I4 group. So anyhow, to the question, one thing that we always find, and this is probably not solvable, is that the workshop is still a relatively short amount of time, and we're trying to get as many people to participate in it, which means always people never have enough time to really do everything that they want to do. And in a way that's kind of okay, because it's not so much about making finished work as it is about collecting experience and getting work to a certain point that can later come back into the cube and to other spaces. As example, Javier shared with us all of the places around the world that he took a piece that he began in the cube and then found so many different ways of expressing it. And so giving people a platform to start that experience is great. But there's a very specific question that we're now mulling over, which is that in all of the spatial music workshops that we've done so far, there are really two pieces to it. There's an instructional piece at the beginning to just kind of help people who might not have had any experience before in such spaces to know, well, what do you do? I mean, like, I kind of get the idea of stereo. Now what do I do when I have 150 loudspeakers? So that instructional piece is to give people some tools to begin to know how to deal with the cube. But that initial piece, which we ramp down as we start ramping up more individual time in the cube and other spaces, it does take time away. And so we're wondering, what would it be like if we separated it out? Because another thing that's kind of always been a problem for us, or a concern for us, is we put out the spatial music workshop and we get lots and lots and lots of applicants, at least for something like as specialized as this. I think we usually get something like 50 or 60, sometimes more applicants, and every single one of those projects, just speaking for myself, I look at these, I want this to happen, I want this to happen, I want this to happen, and it's like, okay, you can have 5 of those, and that really feels just super regrettable. I mean, in part just because, beyond the projects, everybody that we've invited has been just such a really wonderful and interesting person that we just really enjoy getting to know. So we've been asking ourselves, maybe we should separate these things out. I mean, maybe we should have a more structured classroom-like experience in the cube that wouldn't be about making art, but it would be all about everybody who participated in it getting the skills to deal with this kind of environment, and then those skills would be transferable. You could take those skills to ZKM. You could take them to RPI. You could take them to Sean's new space at RISD, or you could take them back to the cube. But it would be a very different thing. It would be like a class kind of experience, and we probably, I hate to say it, but we'd probably have to charge for it too, because it would be more like the sort of workshops that are done other places. But then if we did that, then the spatial music workshop would have no instruction whatsoever. We would only admit people who are just ready to go, and then all of that time would be there for those projects. So I don't know, this is something we're mulling over, so let me just throw it out there. What do people think about that idea?
So I'd like to answer it a little bit from my perspective. So I found out well enough ahead that I could work on downloading the floor plans for the cube and doing my crash course in Super Collider, which you easily tripled my skills when I was down there, but a lot of homework ahead of time. And the other thing I did in order to make the most effective use of the time that I had in the cube, I was staying at my sister-in-law's house. I would get up every morning at 5 a.m., I swear. And I don't get up at 5 a.m. because it's like, this is a golden opportunity. So, I mean, it sounds like the instruction is take some of that and formalize it. If it weren't formalized, I think at least having some infrastructure where people could prep themselves ahead of time and, give them the advice to use your away time as effectively as possible. I was happy at the end of that week, but that's just from my perspective.
Yeah, my experience is very similar to Dale's. I came with a lot of material already developed there. I had a clear idea what I wanted to do. I didn't know if it would work or not. That was the question. But then I started from the minute one trying to get that done. If I had started to experiment with that, I wouldn't have gone farther than a couple of tests at the end of the week and not a complete piece that I could then get out and play somewhere else. So that's the thing. So I guess that your idea about first 60 projects and you want all of them, but then you have different kinds of things. You have professionals in HTLA work and people that have never worked further than stereo or quadraphonic. So I think it's a good idea, and perhaps it's a way of making more income for you guys there as well, which could then, that income could support more the workshop for more professionals, because basically we had to pay everything, tickets, everything by ourselves to get there. So it would be nice if we could have some help by getting there at some point as well. But I guess that the idea of having a kind of, well, this project is good, but do you have the experience to do this? Then if you have the experience, go here. If you don't have the experience, then come study with us, and you may get the opportunity to try one of these ideas, or in the future to get to the workshop. No? The other thing is once a year, 5 people, it will always be too less. So that's another thing that you may actually think if it can be more than once a year, so that you can get at least twice the amount of people for that. I know it's difficult, but there are ideas that I'm giving you. But I think that the idea of beginners and non-beginners is not a bad idea in the end. Because it can actually make more contacts for you, and more people have experiences with working with this kind of things, which can be then actually taken outside the cube as well. And that experience, as I did, once I worked there, I knew how to work with that very clear. So I don't need to be in that kind of space to make another piece. I can do it at home and then try in a rehearsal or something like that. So it's an experience that for professionals and for beginners may be actually essential to go outside and do it somewhere else. So, and having you and your team there to teach people, I think that will be great as well for people that do not have that kind of experience. So that would be my idea.
Yeah. May I come in? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to speak up in support of what Javier just said. I attended the workshop in 2019, just last summer. And I understand some of the difficulties with trying to address the needs of people who are starting and people who might have had experience. I came in also, as Javier and other people mentioned, doing a lot of pre-work. So I was ready for what I wanted to try out within that space. And yet part of the richness of the experience and the interaction was also being able to talk with composers who were coming in for the first time. And what's wonderful about not dealing with experts is that sometimes people who are new to it can undermine some sophisticated ideas. They're sophisticated because, I'm more experienced with that, I had a chance, blah, 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 all kinds of stuff like that. But then they also form, my education also forms walls, where then what I work is within the education I've received. And the wonderful thing about then addressing people who are coming into it new is that they don't have the walls that I have gradually built up over the years, the walls, which is also alternatively called experience. There are wonderful things about that I can bring, but at the same time, there are constraints that come in at the same time. Eric, one of the things, I think I mentioned this to you once, one of the wonderful things about it is how much support that you gave all the participants of the workshop, whether they were brand new to it or whether they were sophisticated. And it was unstinting, and that is a unique experience that you offered all of us. I would encourage, if possible, is to increase it from 1 week to 2 weeks, if possible, because that also would let me get to know the other participants better. And I would have enjoyed that much more. I don't even know if it would be possible to do it in such a way over a 2-week period where each participant is asked to make 2 projects within 2 weeks. I know it's crazy, but the general idea is that if you can do 1 project and then change your mind and make a second project, that would allow the time to learn from what I myself did with the assistance of your wonderful team, to then move to a second. And it would be wonderful to hear how people, other composers, move from doing 1 project, and what other paths can they follow, and where do their imaginations take them. So I would encourage that if at all possible. I'm sure money processes and all that make it difficult, but I would vote in favor of not having a professionals only workshop or a new people only workshop, but maintaining the mixture, the rich mixture that you've done before. So thank you very much, all of you, for doing that.
I'd like to chime in just for a moment, if I may. I'm Leah. I did was part of the 2016 workshop at Wellingham at UVA. I did also with Miriam, we did the MPAC workshop, and were artists in their space afterwards. And so the first part of their workshop was open to many more people. And then the second part was just the 4 of us. And then we had quite a bit of time to work in just that space. Just each of us had half the day to work in each of the spaces. And I thought that that was an interesting model that could be looked at if you were to be going down that. There was the first part had, I don't know how many people, it was a lot. It's like 100 people or so. Yeah, Miriam, I don't know if you want to chime in with that, but I thought that that model did work nicely in terms of just getting more people exposed to the technology and what it could have to offer, and just seeing everything. And then the second part, you know, having people that wanted to work in particular projects. But I loved the work, the 2016 workshop. I thought it was just wonderful. So thank you.
There's a pause, so may I jump in? Another 2016 alum. I wanted a slightly counterpoint to something that's been implied. One of the great things in that year was, Eric, the way you represented the cube as an instrument in its own right, or an orchestra in its own right, something very specific. And so, you know, I was somebody coming in who had quite a lot of experience working on other systems elsewhere. And I decided not to come in with a particular idea at the start, but to see what the specifics of that system and the ideas presented by Eric, Tanner, and fellows on the program, what they came up with. As a technical theme, some kinds of work do translate well to other places, and clearly have been translated well by some of the people. Javier, I think yours is an example. Others don't. And if you make them very specific to that system, then they perhaps don't work elsewhere. And then when you're working on it in your hotel room or friend's room or whatever early in the morning, get ready for your next session, you have to do that out of imagination for what might or might not work. And that's easier for some people, less easy for some others. So I wonder if a technical theme could also include aspects of translation and translatability between different places and systems.
Yeah, I'm Sean Greenlee. I'm from Rhode Island School of Design, and I was in the 2015, the inaugural Spatial Music Workshop. And since I've established a 25.4 channel array at RISD, and one of the things I was thinking about in this discussion so far is that network of spaces, right? The network of HDLA facilities, right? And I think if you know, we have a network here, but if we could kind of strengthen maybe somehow that interchange or that access across these facilities, that could be really productive in terms of thinking about just how we translate pieces from one space to the next. But I think also this educational piece that Eric, you brought up earlier, if, for instance, my institution might offer, well, we plan to offer this summer a course, but it unfortunately wasn't able to happen. But in the future, hopefully we can offer those courses, and then that could be a place to direct people to, potentially, because there's only so many spaces in the workshop, right? So I guess it's partly like increasing access, right, for artists, composers that want to engage in this. And part of that access, I think, too, could be this remote learning as well, right? So at least particularly, in my case, teaching a spatial audio course this spring when COVID happened, suddenly we had to move to everything was going to be binaural and headphones, right? But I've learned a lot in that experience, and I think a lot of like kind of tricks in a way that I've developed in terms of being able to work with students remotely, thinking about binaural, and also keeping in mind how that binaural work could then translate to an HDLA facility or an 8-channel facility, whatever it is. So as part of the educational process, thinking about how the work might be site-specific, but might also be adaptable to different spaces could be kind of key. So perhaps, this remote learning piece could be part of like getting people ready to even, come to the CUBE sessions that are educational, let's say. And through this network, perhaps of alums, it could be connecting people, to kind of help out. So, if it's like, even, just nuts and bolts kinds of stuff, like which Max libraries to use for encoding, decoding of Sonics, walking through workflows in Reaper, things like that.
Kyle, that's a great idea. This is Steve Ellison. I'm with Meyer Sound and participated last year with Eric Dahlman. And I think having remote learning aspect, maybe even if you took the group that we had or your current structure and did the initial, so there was, as part of every day, there were 1 to 2 hours a day of just basically, classroom learning. That could be done ahead of time in a distant learning format, so that more time, once we got there, we had be debriefed and we would already be ready to go, even with, sooner. So perhaps a hybrid in the future, when there is access to physical people being together in the space, even when that happens, you can use a distant learning component as a kind of a precursor to the event, and maybe that's a requirement, and maybe even that you could have a larger audience. So that way, people who do have ideas and can't get into the CUBE, maybe they could learn some of the skills so that then they could apply those to systems they do have access to elsewhere. So you might kind of get a best of both worlds situation that way.
I'm wondering, Kyle and I have been chatting kind of sideline here. Maybe I can get just a quick show of hands or chats, because I can't start a new poll right now. Would you all be willing to contribute, say, like a 1-hour masterclass post spatial music workshop that we host? So we have all these resources available ahead of time. People could watch your tutorial about how to use it, technical or artistic or aesthetic. Then we'd have this nice repo of all these different perspectives on how to use a space like this. Is that something, just a quick show of hands or yes or no in the chat, would you be interested in doing? I'm seeing an hour is too long. Yeah, good comment. So any duration would be appropriate. And I think what's great, we have a lot of different individuals and organizations here that it wouldn't necessarily have to be a Virginia Tech thing. We could kind of co-host, co-share this all over the place. I'm going to close the other poll. So in about a minute. So if you haven't finished that poll, please take a look-see, and then we'll use that to continue the discussion. But this has been really helpful for us so far to getting your ideas. Maybe a transition question from that one. So it seems like translating work in and out of the CUBE and other facilities is a real challenge, or what we're all facing now with headphones and online being a primary delivery system. Are there any strategies or techniques that you found to be really effective from your time at the workshop that you still use today, or the opposite, things that just don't work?
So as far as the kind of translation from space to space, because that's something I've been doing a lot lately, I've kind of, and I think, kind of the work that I did at the Cube, one of the things that I used a lot of like ambisonics before I had come into the Cube and had in a planetarium setting, and I liked, and the Cube, what it made me think of is like, oh, there's all these points now that you can use. And before, I didn't have speakers there, so I was having to virtualize them. But with the Cube, there's actually speakers there. And so one of the things like I've really been doing is kind of building these layered pieces that have like an ambisonics component and maybe like a point-based component. And then you could add, like a different, like a VBAC component. So you have kind of these different algorithmic decodings. And then just like very simple adjustments that need to be made to kind of translate them to different spaces. So, if like, oh, I only have 16 channels instead of 140, and I'm doing point-based stuff, like I have a way of being able to kind of simplify that. So that's kind of how I think working in the, it's like finding ways in the stuff that I'm building to kind of like easily expand to kind of a larger system, or, I find ambisonics, or, one of those kind of spatial algorithms translates pretty easily between different spaces. So it's, I think having, that, but then you can have like other layers to it that can get, expanded or kind of de-expanded depending on how many speakers you have available.
And I got Steve Ashby. Looks like you've raised your hand. Did you have a comment? I'm sorry if I missed you. If your comment was for the last section.
No, I was just saying, like you were asking about doing like a master class or talk. That was all. I was just saying, yeah, I'd be down with doing that.
Great, thank you. Other strategies, and one thing that Eric mentioned early on and has talked about is making specific work for the Cube that is for the Cube and not for anywhere else. So I think that is also a valid choice. Just putting that into the mix of the conversation. Any other takes on translating work or not translating work?
I have a thought. I think one thing that's been really present over the past half decade is just how fast the technology for spatialization moves, that different softwares will come and go and get replaced. So kind of thinking about platform agnostic spatialization strategies and kind of ways to, both software and hardware platforms, keeping it knowledge-based rather than like to a particular tool, if that makes sense. That's just a small comment with respect to all of this.
Arun?
I'd encourage people to think of it as poetry, that the things that we do are a poem that we write within a context. And the context is actually a language. And I'm sure all of us have recognized that poetry moved from one language to another. There are a lot of things that are lost. There are some things which can be preserved, certainly, and also depends on the sophistication of the poet. But I would encourage to think that when we write something for the Cube, it is a poem for that environment. And that if we write something elsewhere, it's a different language, it's a different set of constraints. And thus, how can the thing we want to say, what can we say within that environment that we couldn't say in another environment? Rather than think of what we do, and of course, I'm putting this in a really strong way, rather than think of what we do as being newspaper headlines that can be easily translated from one language to another. We can make certain messages which can be said in one place, in another place, another place, and that's very helpful to do, to be able to say in different languages. where is the bus stop is really useful, okay? But if we want to say something else and something that is not as practical as that, maybe it's desirable that we say it using the language that is available to us. And of course, I'm using the word language as a metaphor for what is available in one environment and what is available in a different environment. So I would say that this has something to do with what each of us wants to say as a creative person and as a creative artist. And then how can we utilize the language in order to say that particular thing? Thank you.
I see Ted's hand.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I agree with what Aaron was saying, and I think it relates to what Eli was saying about being agnostic to platform, and but also the idiosyncratic nature of artists and their work, especially here, a lot of creative coders using different platforms. And I just that's something that I think will tie into thinking about potentially doing the pedagogical course separate from the workshop course as being two different activities, because that sort of pedagogical time might actually be kind of challenging, or if it's too focused on platform or on aesthetic or something, that could be actually be a challenge for that pedagogical time. Whereas in the spatial music workshop, we actually all have our chance to work in the cube and sort of do our idiosyncratic thing, which is important for the pedagogical aspect also. So.
Javier, I see your hand.
Coming back to, do you hear me? Yes. Coming back to the especially for the cube or not especially for the cube, I think that depends a lot in how you focus your work there. Because I think that, for example, if you take the cube as a tool, isn't HDLL, it's a very particular HDLL, but it's still a high density loudspeaker array that can actually, what you do there can be translated somewhere else. No? And that's more or less the idea that I took to go in there. It was not that I will be doing something uniquely for that piece, but something that I can actually learn how to use and then use it somewhere else as well. If you think that more like we said before as an instrument, well, an instrument sometimes is something more particular, and then you may actually require only those kinds of characteristics there. And so again, we come back to what Aaron said before, the characteristic of the artist, how you conceive that kind of thing, how you see your work as an artist and what you want to do. And I think that that's a particular way of looking at that. Not the only one, but the difference between making the HLA a tool or an instrument may actually make it more place dependent or not what you're doing there. I guess that if you get into the more installative situation, that will be more place specific, because I think that the cube for an installation will be unique for some things that you cannot replicate anywhere else. But for electroacoustic music, acousmatic and all that may be more transferable, I think. Just to put my little grain of sand there.
I definitely found the uniqueness of the cube and its high density and layers to be really a great challenge and opportunity. And I like the fact that it helped me kind of think about sound diffusion in different ways that I normally don't get the opportunity to work with in systems like that. So I like if it was, so I see both sides of this in terms of, yes, we want to take skills and pieces and play them other places that don't have 100+ loudspeakers, but it is great to be in that space and take advantage of that opportunity for that density. And I just want to share really quickly. This is an image. Oh, there's no screen sharing. Never mind. I was going to share an image really quickly. But,
let's see if we can do that real quick.
Just yeah, it's. I meant to show it earlier, but I had some challenges with my iPad, or I couldn't quite get the photo. But I just want to show you my view of the cube. You get that, Tanner? Anyways.
Give it a try again.
Yeah, let me try it again here. There we go. Okay. Share. All right. So this is my view of the cube in the space map. So basically taking this cube and turning it into a circle and then opening it up, and through two different layers. So these are both essentially manifolds into these layers. And at the top, here are the top loudspeakers, the top square. This is the bottom ring. And then I don't know what this one is here, but it was a great opportunity. I really enjoyed it. So thanks for that.
If I could follow up on that really quickly. Actually, I'm hearing a lot of things I'm really loving here, and kind of putting together some of the things that Javier had said with what Arun had said. And I was thinking about this idea of the cube as instrument, and I think all sorts of things are being renegotiated right now, and maybe have been for a long time, including like, what is your relationship to an instrument? I mean, there's a sense traditionally that you master the instrument, you control the instrument, but there's another way to think of that as like you learn from the instrument, you allow the instrument to transform you. And I think part of maybe rethinking things that's happened for me as part of a long-term process of engaging with the cube was really stopping to think about pieces as these fixed things. And I think that that in a way goes back to the point that Scott had made during his presentation about you don't make something to last. I mean, it has a very time-constrained sense. And even earlier, I think Stockhausen in the 60s talked about the idea that it seemed ridiculous to talk about the idea that you end a piece, that the piece was really part of a process. So if you think less about the idea of making a finished work of art in the cube and more about creating an experience that's going to lead to other experiences, both for you and the people that you're sharing it with, then I think it becomes a very different thing. And it's also kind of given me a lot of food for thought in terms of what do we want to be accomplishing in the cube. And also takes me a little bit back to one of the kind of mythical places of education in the middle of the century, Black Mountain College, where the director of art for a while, Joseph Albers, said, we're not creating works to be hung in museums. We're collecting experience. So what all of you had said recently really, really helped me to rethink that a bit. So thank you.
I have a short reaction to what you just said, Eric. The Spaces Speak, which I imagine you've read, it's probably an early piece for folks working in spatial music, but he makes a very strong point about proto-instruments versus meta-instruments. And so I think in his framework, the cube would be a meta-instrument. There were some things that I learned and did in the cube that I could bring back to the planetarium. I mean, the spatiality was different, the speaker setup was different, but getting it to work, I mean, it definitely had ideas in there that I was able to bring back and adapt to that space. And so, I think a lot is portable. But in addition to that, I agree that you're really, and that's Blester's whole point, you're really making the space an instrument and composing for the thing. And maybe it's that technique more than the piece per se that you take away from there. A final thing I want to say, we had large events planned for both summer 2019 and summer 2020 in the planetarium. Well, 2019, they started working the building and they said, no, you can't bring anybody in. And 2020, we had COVID. And so my ultimate creation for the planetarium at the end of an entire summer was heard by one custodian, right before she retired. And she said, you know, this is so much better than those laser light shows. You got to market this. And then I tore it down. So it was the ultimate ephemeral piece. And I am proud of that comment from her, even though nobody else has heard it or seen it. So that's all I had to say.
On the subject of transportability, one thing I've been toying with is not that we can do this right now, but there are several spaces around the world that have a uniform now spatial audio system of some kind, and that's movie theaters. So once we start getting back into places of congregation, this might be a venue for distribution so we can get work shown in sort of repeatable ways. I don't really have any follow-up on that, but if anyone's interested in chatting about that later, that's one thing I'm interested in doing. So we're coming close to our official end time. Arun, I saw you had your hand raised. You have a statement or a question? You're muted.
I could, but if you're trying to wrap up, I don't need to say it.
I think we don't have to wrap up right on time. So since we're all here together, I think it's a good time to say what you'd like to say.
Okay, thank you. Only that I would like to put out for people, particularly without any disrespect, that bringing up the notion of compositions that self-destruct and do away with themselves, artworks that do that. Just a reminder that we live in a world in which a lot of things are treated that way, where things are built within the capitalist system, of course, that are the whole idea, there's a word for it, and I'm an old man and I'm forgetting the word, where commodities are built in order to decay so that more commodities can be sold. And that other things, including people, are treated as things that can be thrown away. And some of the politics of what's going on in our country now are reflective of that. So given that we live in a world in which people and things are built to be destroyed, maybe artwork is an attempt to resist that. And maybe it can be one issue in an abstract way of a socially useful artwork is something that maintains its integrity despite what our society makes of it, despite that our society makes of it as something that can be thrown away after one instance. So I wanted to just put that out there, again, without disrespect for the gentleman who brought up that artist from the 1960s. And then just one second thing that I think I've forgotten my second thing. You're lucky I'm an old man. Thank you.
I'd like to maybe just tag onto that. I mean, I feel like art, is also, I think can be very much used to just be a reflection of our time. So maybe instead of, it's like kind of like exploring how that, how that concept of using art, that sort of deconstructing or is a reflection of that.
Yeah, thank you for your perspectives. I think that this is something we think about in ephemeral media a lot, ephemeral work. The last question that we had for everyone was, would you like to do this again? And we mean that for this kind of format of get together and chat and share ideas, as well as the workshop overall.
I'll just put out there, we have this incredible brain trust here. If you just kind of consider everybody who is here, and I'm seeing all these thumbs going up. I mean, the really cool thing about that, I mean, this was actually, pretty formal in a certain way, but things might be a little bit looser and definitely, different if we were to come back. But especially thinking about all of the things that we've heard in response to the ideas we threw out there, there's a possibility that you could help us to really rethink the workshop in a very profound way.
I think one thing that we're going to do is go back and figure out how to consolidate all the great ideas and links and media that everyone shared today and share it with you guys so you can then go share it with everyone you want to. So if there's any interest from you about doing that offline, please be in touch. I guess I'd say if there's any other comments or anything about the poll that surprised anyone, if you had a chance to look through it. Any last thoughts before we close up?
I have a question since we happen to be here anyhow and
Yep.
figure this is better than email. Has anybody ever done like a 3D computer game of sorts, and it could be collaborative with multiple players, where they fly around in a graphical space and then use the spatialization of the sound to track their locations? Has anybody done anything along those lines?
In terms of work in the cube, we've had sort of gamified things that use location-based information to generate audio. So in that, I don't know if that completely answers your question, but we do have means to track with optical and RF, and that has been applied to sort of multi-person tracked spatial events.
Okay, yeah, it's sort of along the same lines. I'm in the midst of doing, of all things, a 3D visualization of COVID-19 simulated propagation at my university, and I'm sonifying the process and the progress of the infection. And right now, the sonification is global, but I want to see what I can do with spatializing it. So as you fly through specific courses and connections between courses, you hear what's closer to you more than you hear what's far away. So I don't know, maybe one of these years I'll have something ready to submit to CubeFest again.
I know a lot of people, I mean, there's a lot of people in kind of the game audio world that, do that kind of stuff. I personally, I know people that, do that kind of work. I haven't personally, so I like the large scale stuff personally, but with that, but I think if you, I don't know if you're on the like spatial audio, like the AR VR group on Facebook, but they have a community of people that might be able to offer you some advice.
Thanks.
Well, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to field questions. I really appreciate everyone taking their afternoon to be with us and have a great conversation. We hope to have you back in the cube soon. Kyle and Eric, do you have any closing thoughts?
Thank you all very much for being here, and especially thank you all to the people who were supposed to be in the cube this week that we that we could not do that. So we hope to definitely have you all back in the future, but very much to Scott, Alexa, and Sam, we look forward to having you on campus very soon.
Yeah, and just to second that, thanks everybody for being here. And also from the very start, sharing the experience of being in the cube was a key point, but a second and equally key point for us was building a community of people who shared our interests. And it's just so wonderful to see almost everybody who's been at these workshops in the past come back to join us virtually. So no matter how things go in the near future, let's keep this community going, because I think it's really something special.
For sure. And one other thing that I might add is I would encourage you all to apply to CubeFest in the future. That's a good opportunity to come back and present work in the Cube, as well as I direct a student experimental music ensemble that performs in the Cube every semester when we operate. So if any of you are interested in making some student works for the Cube, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to collaborate with you on something such as that for the students in the space.
All right, everyone, you have a great week. Thanks for coming, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
everybody.
To everybody.
Bye, guys. Thank you.